Hey everyone, Groceries here. Today I want to talk about trekking poles. What kind, how to use them, what they're good for, what they're not. Not every trekking pole is the same. Not every trekking pole is created equal. So I'll get closer here. Here's an example of a carbon fiber trekking pole, much lighter than say aluminum or steel. You can get all kinds. It just depends on how much money you want to spend, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to get good poles. Most poles are set up with little, like usually in three sections. So you'll have two connecting parts to actually clamp down and adjust the height of them. There are other types of poles where they come in three pieces, or even some of them are in two pieces, so they only have one clamp. I'll call it a clamp. What it does is it just clamps the pole down tight. Also, they come in a lot of materials, like I say, steel, aluminum, and graphite, like carbon fiber. Those are your three, I would say, three most common ones. The ones that come apart, there are also poles that come apart. You can take them apart and there's a little connecting wire that keeps them joined. So you can actually fold them up into three and they fit into your pack much easier. But I find those, the extra hardware required to keep the three pieces connected actually add weight to the pole. So I don't know how you feel about that. I think that just becomes personal preference. These poles will usually have a handle long enough for you to choose which material and which height you want to get at. We'll get into using the poles in a minute, but right now I just want to actually talk about the physical poles themselves. These ones that I have here are Z-Packs. They're probably the lightest poles I've ever had. My philosophy on it is you're not going to get more strength. If you fall and your body weight falls on trekking poles, you will break that pole. I don't care what it's made of. You can't put 200 pounds on a 1 pound pole and expect it to hold up your weight. And I have busted a couple poles. I had a nice little memorial last year for one of my trekking poles on the AT. I haven't broke one since, by the way, just saying. Also, most trekking poles come with a carbide, like a carbon, very hard carbon tip. And most of these tips are replaceable. You can replace them, and they're fairly cheap to replace. They're usually about 10 bucks. Now, I don't have what are called baskets on these particular poles, but most poles come with a little plastic ring around, and they come in different sizes. And they range right up from the big, fat, wide ones, which generally are used for snow and or sand. I would imagine you could use them for sand as well. Whew, almost poked my eye out. But anyway, I digress. So the ones I have, they're pretty simple. You can also measure them. They generally range from around 105 or 110 centimeters up to around 130. I don't think you're going to find them much longer than 130. And I believe for that, I think that's just so that it keeps its stability and its strength while you're using it. Me personally, I like them, and we'll talk about fitting them in a second. But anyway, so those are the materials that trekking poles are made of. Who are trekking poles for? They're for everybody, really. I, for many years, did not believe in trekking poles. I would not use them. I would not thank you for them. I have, however, seen the light. I don't know that I always would use them. It depends on if I'm having a lot of downhills that day. I will take at least one pole out. I love one pole. One pole for me just works really well, but that's just me. Again, you have to decide for yourself. Also, one pole for me frees up one hand for video work. But let's just, the construction of the poles themselves. So these particular ones, you do not need a tool to tighten them and loosen them. Like for example, even if I had clamped that completely tight, sometimes it'll still slide. Like the pole will still slide around. That's not what you want, obviously. So they will supply a little wrench or whatever. These ones are nice because you can just turn them. There's a little thing here that tightens and loosens up the clamp. So if they're too loose, you can just tighten them. The handles. The handles come in all kinds of materials. These particular ones that I have here have cork, like real cork, on the top, but then they have like a nylon, a soft, almost like a foam at the bottom. And oftentimes when you're going up a hill, you might want to put your hand down here for that reason. A lot of people use them different ways and whatever. But let's get into some other aspects of using trekking poles. Holding on to a trekking pole. How do you properly hold a trekking pole? You have I don't know if you can see that, I hope you can. You have a loop that comes on these, and they're generally adjustable. Each one has a different means of adjusting. These ones here, you just pull out the bottom piece and it'll tighten, self-tighten. There's different materials. But the one thing you have to remember, when you're using a trekking pole and you go to hold on to it, do not put your hand like this on the pole. See what happens is these straps are here for many reasons. Number one, so that you can use the strap itself to push off, but also so that you don't lose them. But the proper way to hold these poles is to come up underneath with the loop. Put your hand through and then grab the pole, so that no matter what, even if you lose the pole, even if you fall, or even if you lose your footing and let go of them, they're still attached to you. They're still there. They won't fall down off a mountain. Also, what these do is these spread the tension, the actual weight, down around your hand and not right on. Like if you were to say, for example, use them this way, they would really rub and hurt down here on the soft spot of your wrist. Here, when you come up from underneath, you can hold on to them in such a way that you almost don't even need to hold the pole. I'll back up so you can see it. You don't really even need to hold the pole. You just use your whole hand to do it. Another thing about trekking poles is what length should they be? Now that's subjective, okay? I've seen some people that love to have poles, oops, didn't want to do that, that love to have their poles so small, so short, that their arms are still reaching down. When you have a trekking pole, and I'll go to the side so you can see it, you want it so that this part of your arm, your forearm here, is level to the ground. See this here, this trekking pole right there, whatever length that's at, it doesn't matter. This is the perfect way. Like you don't want it down here like this, and you don't want it up like this, because you just don't have any power from here. You don't have any way of managing the pole. So for me, personally, I'm not very tall. I'm just under 5'8", and I like them at around 112. So I'll just set these up for my liking. Everybody's different. And then we'll show you how they're actually used, because this is important. This is very important. There's a lot of people make the mistake of using them incorrectly. And I'm going to show you how they're used properly. So you've got your poles. You're wearing your poles. You've got them on, right? Oh, by the way, why is that one so much shorter? Anyways, you've got them. Another trick, by the way, you can just take your poles, drag them on the ground, and usually they'll unravel if these little loops here wind up and get like twisted. You can just let go of them, lay them on the ground, and they'll reset. Using trekking poles. Opposites. So if you're walking, say I didn't have a trekking pole and I was just walking like this, I would go like, I would walk like this right? So I would, when I'm normally walking, my left foot would go out and my right arm would go out. This always gives you 3 points of contact to the ground. This is very stable. This keeps you very stable. When you're high up on mountains and so on, this is very important. Always keep the poles far enough from you so that you don't, if you happen to fall or if you're going downhill, do not allow the poles to be in front of you. You do not want this. You do not want them to come into your gut if you happen to slip or fall or go forward. I'm not saying have them way out, but have them generally, you know, the width of your shoulders, right? A little bit outside of your feet. Especially going down, you want to keep them a little wider. I see a lot of people that are going down hills like this. This is not good. If you slip or you trip and then boom, they're in front of you. You cannot save yourself when you're doing it. So keep a little bit of width when you're doing it. And I'll just pan across the screen. So like left, right, left, right. See how I'm doing that? I'll come the other way now. My left arm goes out, my right leg goes forward. My right arm, my right pole comes out, my left foot goes forward. And so on and so forth, just like this. Do not let the pole get ahead of your foot when you're walking on flat ground. Do not, for example, use the pole like this. I see a lot of people doing this. It kind of defeats the purpose of the pole. The pole is to help set your tempo, set your rhythm. The pole is there to help you stabilize on the ground as well. There's many wonderful purposes for trekking poles. So keep your poles fairly comfortably wide. Always alternate like this. Right? I'll come across the screen again like this. That's on flat ground. Now when you're going uphill, because the poles will come up in front of you to help you go forward, like, you know, you want to say climb a hill, that's the time when having the handle that's longer like this is handy to, I call it choking up on the trekking pole. But if the hill's on an angle, and especially if it's a steep one, when you go to put that pole down, because this ground in front of me is higher than where my feet are, what's going to happen is if I have the pole at full length, I have to put the pole up here, like to actually get up that hill. But you don't want that. You want the pole to always be at a comfortable, nice 90-degree angle here. That's the most comfortable, that's where you've got the most stability, the most power. That's the proper way to use a pole. And that's not open for debate. I'm sorry, that's just kinesiology. That's how your joints work, that's how your arms work. So what you do then is you will choke up on that pole or shorten it. It's up to you. I don't like to do that. I like to just leave these here loose enough, like these are a little tight right now, so that I can get down at least down to about there. Generally the steepest mountain I'll climb would never require me to go much lower than about this on the pole for an uphill. For downhill, yeah. Downhill, I tend to hold the pole more at the end. And what I do with the downhill is a little different. On a downhill, I would go down, but this is the only time I would put the tip of that pole out in front. You'll never see me with the pole on a forward angle, ever, unless it's a downhill. And I'm helping myself stabilize as I go down. And still, I keep them wide enough so that if I do fall, I don't go into them. Because you can rupture your spleen in a heartbeat if you fall onto a trekking pole that way. And that's the time when I kind of hold them near the end of the pole to give me a little more length so that the pole goes down and I'm still in that strong position here. Very important. Stay in that strong position. And this is where the trekking poles really help your knees. When you're going down a mountain, what a trekking pole does, or down any hill, what a trekking pole does is allow you to keep stability in your knees because you are not letting your knee come in front of your ankle. The minute your knees are out here in front of your ankle, I learned this from golf. If your knee's out here and you're walking, you can feel the meniscus. You can feel the meniscus and the ACL. And you don't want that because, listen, when you're doing mile after mile, you're gonna create stress problems, like from repetition, repetitive movements. So you always want to have what I call neutral joint alignment, where your knees are above your ankles. That's where you have the most strength. That's where you have the least resistance. You know, your weight is stacked properly. And going down a hill, a trekking pole affords you that luxury of maintaining that straightness in your leg, so that you stack, what I call stacked. It's the same with anything. It's the same with any sport. You know, nobody in basketball plays like that. Like, I mean, they do crouch down, but they keep their neutral, what's called neutral joint alignment. And that's what trekking poles allow you to do. So going down, you can keep them in front of you, keep them a little wider, so that if something does happen, you can spread them out and they won't hurt you. And they'll stay on your arms no matter what. Very hard for a trekking pole to come off like, you just don't lose poles, right? And if the pole's twisted like this, just take it, put it on the ground, boom, grab it. Lay it forward, boom, grab it. That's how I use the poles. You know, I'll take the one pole off, I'll use a camera or something, but I'll always use the stability, and I'll always use that pole with the opposite foot, right? Like that. And I'll never have the pole ahead of my foot. So if I'm, for example, stepping forward with this foot, never will I put that pole out there. That's not what it's for. That's actually slowing you down. That's causing you to exert more pressure, more energy, because you're pushing into that. That's pushing you this way, and your legs are pulling you that way. You're wasting energy. Always keep the handles. Yeah, I hear you. Always keep the handles of the poles ahead of the tip, so that you're always like moving forward. Stuff here. So always just remember that, you know, you're just going like this. Right? That's it. That's the best way to use a trekking pole. And they're good for other things, obviously. I mean, they're good for helping you with your tent, standing your tent up. There's a lot of tents that require trekking poles. But as far as the materials of the pole, the handles of the pole, this is all personal preference. I prefer cork, always. I prefer regular, normal cork. It absorbs the moisture, the sweat. It always has a grip. Even if it does get wet, it's still very grippy. I don't feel like I'm going to lose the pole. So for me, that's just my personal preference. You may have a different idea of what you prefer in a trekking pole. You may not want to use trekking poles. That's up to you. You may want to use a staff. Some people use a big staff, and like, say I was about this high, and they just hold it like, you know, like that, and walk with it. There's all kinds of walking aids that people use hiking. I was asked to do this video because there's a lot of people that kind of get the wrong idea about poles. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. Most of you probably already knew this, but if you did get anything out of the video, please like and subscribe. I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes. I gotta get the hell out of Dodge while I can, and let's go get it.